Hi, folks. Welcome to our weekly chat. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Rob Goller, for those of you who may not know. And this week's topic again came from a conversation, an informal conversation I was having with somebody. We were talking about the upcoming chicken barbecue, Kiwanis Club's Chicken Barbecue, East Aurora Kiwanis Club, and I have my tickets right here ready for Wednesday, June 7th. And the question came up as how long has the chicken barbecue been going on? In other words, when was the first East Aurora chicken barbecue? And if you look really, really closely at the tickets, it says 67th annual. The math is a little off because everything got messed up with COVID. Um, but the first annual chicken barbecue for the Kiwanis Club here in East Aurora was in 1956. And like a lot of community events that have become institutions or just part of the fabric of the community, Carolcade is a good example. They didn't start off as events that were meant to be annual events. That a group got together and they figured would be nice to have a one-off event, maybe a couple years, but I don't imagine they had thought that it was going to go on for a very long time. Maybe 10 years if that. But in the case of the Kiwanis Club Chicken Barbecue, it was not meant to be an annual event. So in 1956, a group of the Kiwanians got together. There's actually a need in the community. The Boys Club, which is today the Boys and Girls Club, on Payne Street, they were meeting in Clement Hall, which was a building that was there, no longer there. The name is still there, but the building wasn't. And they needed an expansion badly. So many at that time boys were taking advantage of the programs at the Boys Club that they needed more room. So the Kiwanis Club, there was a building fund, and the Kiwanis Club came up with this idea to hold a chicken barbecue to raise money for that building fund. And so in 1956, this group got together. The East Aurora Advertiser had a photo of the planning committee. They were going to have chicken in Hamlin Park on that first Wednesday in June. Actually, it'd be the first Wednesday after the week of Memorial Day. So sometimes that's not always the first Wednesday, but that became a tradition. And they had it that Wednesday, and it was only supposed to be a one-time event to raise money for this building fund for the East Aurora Boys Club. And what they did is they had entertainment. They had the high school musical groups come to Hamlin Park to entertain. They promised all an evening for the family in Hamlin Park. And there was also a softball game between the civic clubs of East Aurora, and they hyped that up. And what I find interesting is we still do it similarly in the same format today. So there'll be an old timers baseball game in Hamlin Park this year, live music in the park. Most people now seem to be getting their dinners to go, but there is still that atmosphere in the park that similar to the one that was there on the very first chicken barbecue back in 1956. Now, that first barbecue was actually came about, it has its roots the year earlier, 1955. They had a picnic between the Kiwanis Club and the Lions Club, and they had a chicken barbecue at Emery Park, and it was just for the members of the two organizations. And apparently, the menu was so good, according to some members, according to an account in the Easter Advertiser, that they just copied the menu for the park and invited the public in addition to the members of the organization. So that's how the first barbecue came about. It was so successful, and the weather was actually really good for that first one, that in 1957 the organizing committee got back together, thought it was a great way to raise money for this building fund for the Boys Club. That in 1957 they had another one, and then in 1958 they had another one. In 1959 they had another one, and as they say, the rest is history. And it's evolved over time. Some of you might remember, I do as a kid, at the Main Street School. You could smell the chicken being prepared throughout the community. The smell of the chicken permeated throughout East Aurora, so that was exciting for the day. And they'd have big grills throughout the park. Um, and that smell would just go all over town, and a lot of people do remember that. And in recent years, they've changed it a little bit. We're going back, I believe, more traditionally this year. But it's still the same Kiwanis Club raising money, a big fundraiser for important community projects that they help support. So the first project was the Boys Club expansion, which happened, and if, we had a new Boys and Girls Club since then. So that project back in 1956 has since evolved into another project. So our Boys and Girls Club is bigger and better than it was at that point. But that the Kiwanis Club was supporting that effort, and the chicken barbecue at that point at the beginning was solely for the purposes of raising that money. And they again, it was just such a successful event that they kept doing it year after year after year, and they say the rest is history. So that's how it became an annual event. But it didn't start out that way. I don't think they had any plans to have that event continue on, like, and be as successful. I don't know if you talked to the people originally, if they would have imagined they'd be very pleased at how successful of a community institution it became. With that said, though, a lot of work goes into it. What I find interesting throughout the years, the photographs that have been published in the paper of that first Wednesday, or perhaps second Wednesday of June, um, where a lot of people are behind the scenes making it work. That's still the case. I have a few friends in Kiwanis who are busy right now, have been for months preparing. So we have to remember that these traditions, and so probably the Kiwanis Chicken Barbecue here in East Aurora and in many communities, you'll look around and see events that have been happening every single year. And COVID was actually the big test of it. So Kiwanis skipped their chicken barbecue because of COVID. And in some communities, events like that have fallen to the wayside. Happened during World War II. Events that were happening every year, and they had a system in place, a rhythm going to keep the organizing committee was able to keep it going. And something like the pandemic or World War II comes along and just kind of throws the pendulum off balance. And then when the pandemic and the war were over, the committees had fallen apart, and getting the groups back together had become more and more difficult. So even more so after COVID, to have an event like this keep going is quite impressive. Um, so it probably is one of, I talked about Memorial Day ceremonies organized by the local veterans organizations, is probably the longest continual annual event in East Aurora, and the Kiwanis Chicken Barbecue is probably one of the others, because that's a pretty long time for an event to be continuing each year, and have the volunteer resources each year for it to continue on. So the answer to the question during our discussions about when the first chicken barbecue was, 1956. So if you want to be part of history, go to Hamlin Park or buy tickets from a Kiwanian, and join in that historic event here in East Aurora. So again, thanks for joining me. Each week we like to chat about something, so if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments. If you're not following this page, if you're watching it because you were linked from some other page that it was shared to, feel free to, I would appreciate it if you would like or follow this page so you can keep up to date. And again, I am the town and village historian, but this project that I do is separate, so anything I talk about here is not part of my technical duties as town and village historian. Again, thanks for joining me, and let me know what you think, and send your comments my way. Take care. Have a great week.